Hello, Tennessean viewers and readers. This is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director. This is part of a series of conversations I'm having with Metro Council at-large candidates for the September 14th runoff, and I'm delighted to have Councilwoman Delishia Porterfield with me here today. How are you doing today, Councilwoman?
I am wonderful. It's a beautiful day today, and I'm super excited to be here with you. Thank you, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad for you to be here. Tell us a little bit about why you're running for this position.
Yeah, absolutely. So, many people know I used to be a school teacher. I taught students with disabilities all over Metro Nashville. And what I saw was that, we didn't have textbooks in classrooms. And unfortunately, a lot of families were having to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make the ends meet. And I decided I wanted to do something about it. So 4 years ago, decided to run for council, for Metro Council. Thankfully, I won my election, and I've spent the last 4 years fighting for District 29, but also fighting for Nashville. So I've been on the front lines fighting for justice, equity, and democracy. And while being fully present in my district and getting infrastructure improvements and stormwater improvements and traffic calming and street pavings and the things that are really important to the people out there in our district, I've also been fully present for a lot of our citywide fights and fighting for working people in the city. And I had to make a decision on where I was really being called and led to serve, and decided that my heart was really with these citywide issues centered around fighting for working people. So I made the decision to go ahead and run for council at large.
Well, thank you for that. And, from your experiences of the district, you've talked a little bit about that. What have you learned that you think will be beneficial to you if you're elected to this position?
Absolutely. I think being a council member, it is just such a wonderful experience, and you get a lot of connections with people. So, our district is 20,000 people, roughly about 20,000 people in District 29. And I have had the opportunity to meet so many people and to develop really strong relationships, whether they are families or senior citizens, just people all throughout the city, all throughout the district, excuse me, really developed a lot of relationships with them and listened to what people are saying that they need and just try to figure out a way to really like address those problems. And that's something that I'll be able to take with me. Hopefully, if elected, I'll be able to take with me citywide. And, I take those stories with me. I think when I think about funding, like for education, and I'm able to talk about what it's like to be in the classroom or what it's like to be a parent with a child in public schools, you're bringing your lived experience to the job. So I believe being a at-large council member, I'll be able to bring those experiences of what I've learned from being a district council member to this job.
In your questionnaire, you talked about being chair of the Minority Caucus and also being a leader on the Education and also the Finance committees. What are some of the things that you're proudest of having contributed to or having done over the last several years?
So I'm super proud. There are lots of great stuff that happened, but I think the things I'm most proud about as vice chair of the Budget and Finance Committee under Chair Councilwoman Quante Toombs, we were able to help get our teachers, the highest paid teachers in the state of Tennessee, which we know teachers still need to make more money, but it was great to be able to get them there. Last year, I brought an amendment to get our lowest paid Metro Nashville public schools employees $1,000 bonus. And $1,000 may not seem like a lot of money for some people, but for some of our lowest paid employees, $1,000, especially on the short check around Christmas time, they get a short check, unfortunately. So for them to be able to get that money during that time made a huge difference. And I heard from so many people that have been struggling that talked about how that made a really big difference. And then I'd also say the $5 million I was able to get last year for Metro General Hospital, which we know serves our uninsured and underinsured residents of our city. And Metro General is the city's hospital, and Metro General takes care of all of us. So it's really important to me to make sure that they're properly funded. And when they needed additional money, we fought hard to get it. Lastly, I say, I thought that was my last one, but lastly, I'd say is fighting really hard for diversity and inclusion on our city's boards and commissions. Over the last 4 years, under Mayor Cooper's administration and in collaboration with this minority caucus, we fought really, really hard to make sure that these boards and commissions reflect the people of Nashville. So making sure that the boards and commissions and the people that are doing the work look like the people of our city.
One of the things that is going on right now, we're recording this on August 23rd, is the special session of the legislature. And a few months ago, you're the one who made the motion to reinstate Justin Jones as an interim state representative after he was expelled. Would you talk a little bit about that experience and how that went? Because there was so much frenetic energy around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's no secret that Representative Jones and I both ran for that seat last August, and he beat me by, I think, 244 votes. And I'm a big believer in democracy, and people get to choose who represents them. So, when Representative Jones was expelled, that was really personal to me because that meant the people of House District 52, my district, my community where I live, we no longer had representation. So as soon as that happened, I mean, we immediately went into action. I had the opportunity to work with Senator Charlene Oliver, Tequila Johnson from the Equity Alliance, Councilwoman Zulfa Soror, and so many other people. But the four of us really led the charge to make sure that not only was Representative Jones reinstated, but we wanted to send a strong message that we will not bow down to threats to our democracy. So not only did we want him to be reinstated, but I had a personal goal to make sure that he was back the same night that they went back into session. So we immediately just hit the ground running. Actually, before the expulsion happened, when we were at the protest, I was out there at that protest with my daughter. We had actually just got finished leading some chants on the megaphone right before everything happened. And right when I left, I got the call that they were threatening to expel him. So we actually started working the day of the protest prior to the expulsion to make sure that this process would go really smoothly in the event that he did get expelled. So working with the council office to make sure that we had everything in line, making sure that we looked at everything we needed to do to suspend the rules, and just making sure that that process was going to go really smoothly so that we could, again, send that message that we're going to do whatever it takes to protect our democracy and to protect Nashvillians.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Another big vote that you were very much involved in was the vote on the stadium, on the Titan Stadium, and you used a very unique procedure to try to stop it. Actually, would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did was called a motion to reconsider. So I was one of the most vocal people that was against the stadium deal for multiple reasons, but ultimately, this is not what I believed and what many others believed was in the best interest of working class people here in Nashville. So I fought really hard against it, and there was a coalition of us. There were lots of council members that were very adamant against it. Councilmember O'Connell, Councilmember Mendez, and several others. We were adamantly against this. There were also a lot of community groups that were coming out that were against this. So when you look at the public hearing that we had a lot of people that were, the people that were in favor were people that were tied to the deal. In most cases, were people that tied to the deal in some type of way. So there were people that their organizations were going to financially benefit, or they were directly benefiting being tied to the Titans. When you looked at the people that were against it, this is what Nashville looked like. It was the people of Nashville. It was working people in this city that were saying, we don't want you to focus on a shiny new stadium. We want money for teachers and textbooks, and we want sidewalks and parks, and we want to be able to live in the city. So it was really important to me that we did everything we could to try to fight that and stand up for the will of the people of Nashville. So the whole time I was adamantly against it. And the night of the vote, after hearing people talk, we realized we just did not have the votes to defeat it. So what I did was called a motion to reconsider. And that means that someone who votes in the affirmative, meaning someone who votes for the legislation, can file what's called a motion to reconsider. And if other people raise their hand, then it gets bumped off of that agenda and it gets moved to another agenda. So the thought was that if we do the motion to reconsider, and it's something that's been used to dissent, for decades. So it's not, something that's new. It's just not used often. And, the hope was that it got pushed back to another agenda to give us more time to continue to try to defeat it. But unfortunately, the motion to reconsider was overturned when the chair's ruling, the body determined that they did not have faith in the ruling of the chair. So unfortunately, it did not work.
So now that it has been passed, if you're elected to this role as Metro Council at Large, how would you like to influence the development of the East Bank around there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, there are a couple of different things that we have to consider. And what we keep hearing is that East Bank is going to be Nashville's next best neighborhood and next newest neighborhood. We have to balance our current neighborhoods with that new neighborhood, right? So it's great that we're going to get something new and that, a community will be able to enjoy this. But we also have to think about what's happening in Southeast Nashville and Bellevue and Madison and Hermitage, and their communities want sidewalks and parks and things too. So, one, I think that we have to make sure that we're balancing this development and investment in this development with what we're doing with the rest of the city because we have a finite amount of dollars. It's just like your home budget. If all of your money is going to your rent or your mortgage, then you don't have any money left for your car note. So we have to balance our money to make sure that there's equitable development and investment across the city. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is we have to make sure that we're getting feedback from people in the community to hear what they want. And I know that there were a ton of meetings, and I do think that those that were involved in this project, I do think that they tried to get a lot of like input. The meetings that I attended were typically meetings that were more so people that were tied to the project or developers or people that were in a position that they could come and give feedback. People that have been working two jobs that are trying to get their kids ready for school and do their homework, they don't have time in many cases to come to those meetings and give feedback and input. So we have to make sure that we're hearing from people. We also have to make sure that we're looking to see how can we best utilize this for Nashvillians. What does affordable housing look like on their project? What does workforce housing look like on their project? How can we make sure that we're limiting things that can cause harm? One amendment that we tried to get on was to make sure that gambling would not be allowed. If the state were to allow gambling in the state of Tennessee, we want to make sure that gambling is not allowed there on the East Bank. But unfortunately, that amendment didn't pass. So I think we just have to make sure that we're looking at every possibility to make sure that we're putting safeguards up for Nashvillians.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned, and you just alluded to it, is that we are in an affordability crisis. And you talk also about wages. And what do you think that city can do to help with that?
Absolutely. Affordability is really big for me. I'm a single mom, so I knew what it was like to live paycheck to paycheck. Thankfully, I'm not in that situation anymore, but for the longest time I was. So I know what it means to have to make really tough decisions with a finite amount of money. And affordability is just something that has to be addressed. What we're seeing is that the people that make Nashville the it city and the wonderful place that we know to be home, the people that make that city that many times can't afford to live here. So they're moving out to like Clarksville and Rutherford County and other places. So they just can't afford to live in Nashville anymore. So that's something that we have to address. One way we do that is through wages. Metro Nashville government is one of the largest employers here in our city. So when we raise our wages, then other industries, they also have to raise their wages in order to be competitive. So one, like employee pay, sometimes people think that, I'm not a Metro Nashville employee. Why should I care about employee pay? You should care about it because the people that take care of our city should be adequately paid and they should be able to work and retire with dignity. But also, as I stated, it does make other industries raise their wages as well. And when you look at affordability, it's more than just affordable housing. Like we need affordable housing, we need workforce housing, but also people have to make enough money to buy the housing or to rent the housing in the city. So those two things for me go hand in hand, and they're both extremely important.
And one of the things that has been that you've alluded to and others have alluded to is the relationship between the city and the state and the preemption that goes on from the state, the various lawsuits right now that are going on from the city against the state because of the halving of the Metro Council, which won't go into effect at this moment until 4 years from now. And how do you think you, the council, and the new mayor can influence that relationship? I mean, is it beyond repair, or is there something that can be done?
So a few things. One, hopefully it doesn't go into effect 4 years from now. I'm actually a part of the lawsuit suing the state against this unconstitutional legislation that they passed against the will of Davidson County voters. Davidson County voters have voted on more than one occasion that they wanted to keep the council size at 40 people. that was an intentional decision that was made to ensure that we had diversity and representation on our Metro Council. So reducing the size of the Metro Council will have a disproportionate impact on minorities in the city, but also on constituent services, because it's a lot easier to have a relationship and to work with and to know your constituents when you're representing 20,000 people. When you start going to, 40 or 50,000 people, it's a lot harder to get to those birthday parties and weddings and funerals because there are so many people that you're representing. So hopefully it doesn't pass. We're part of the lawsuit. It was initially supposed to be heard this September, but with the other acts of state overreach and now other lawsuits have come on the table, we're now looking at having that be heard in this spring. But to get to your question about how do we repair the relationship between the state and the city, I've been quoted to say, I don't start fights, but I will finish them. And we can't bow down or back down. We're not poking the bear. We're not assaulting the state. But when the state is refusing to do their job, we're in a special session right now that was supposed to be to look at common sense gun control. And you see the majority of Tennesseans believe in and they want to see action around common sense gun control. Six people, were murdered at the Covenant shooting. And that still wasn't enough for some of these state representatives to decide that they are willing to do something and to do what's right. So we here in Nashville, we're going to keep fighting back and we're going to keep standing up for our constituents. And that does make a very tense relationship. So I believe you work with people when you can work with them. So we will absolutely, if there's synergy around things and there's opportunities for us to work together, I welcome the opportunity to work with our state representatives and our state legislators across the state of Tennessee. But when they are preempting us, when they are overreaching, when they are doing things that are unjust, we will fight them every chance that we get, whether that's a protest, whether that is a lawsuit, any way that we can, we're going to stand up for the people of Nashville.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. And before we conclude, I always like to ask guests a little bit about the places they recommend to tourists. You wrote in a questionnaire that you recommend either Tony's Mexican Restaurant or Original Memphis Wings, followed by the Escape Game Nashville, and then maybe the Sensory Deprivation Tank like Float Nashville. Why did you recommend those?
So I'm from Memphis, and Memphis has the best wings in the country. And the restaurant that I mentioned, they are the closest things to Original Memphis Wings. They are delicious. Tony's Mexican Restaurant has just been a staple in our community. It's a really small family-owned restaurant. The food is delicious and the service is amazing. I am a little bit of a nerd and I love puzzles and mysteries. That's part of why I like being on the Metro Council, because it's definitely a big puzzle trying to figure out many of the problems that we have. But when I travel around the country, I always do escape games, and the Nashville escape game is the best one. Like it's a brand, so not just any escape room in Nashville, like the actual one that's like on East Iris, and they have one downtown. They are the best in the country. It's so much fun. So if you've never had the opportunity to do it, you definitely have to check them out. And then lastly, like the floating, the sensory deprivation tanks, I am a big believer in self-care. And the work that we do is really, really hard. So I fight for racial, social, economic justice. I fight for working people every single day. And that is really hard and it's really stressful. So you do have to take time to like decompress and spend time with your family and make sure that you're taking care of both your mental and physical health. So if you've never had the opportunity to go floating, it is so much, I won't say it's fun. It's so relaxing. It is just the opportunity to just relax, unwind, turn your mind off for a little bit and just meditate. And I strongly recommend, if you've never had the opportunity to do it, that you go do it.
Well, thank you so much, Councilwoman Delishia Porterfield, for being my guest today. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Yes, so they can go to my website, which is www.delishiafornashville.com. They also can check me out on social media. It's Delishia for Nash on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. They can also call or text me. My cell phone number is 615-208-3068. My strong preference is that that's during the day and not like at midnight. But, if you have an emergency and you have to give me a call, I'll do what I can to help.
Well, thank you so much again. Remember to our voters that early voting begins this Friday, August 25th, and goes through September 9th. The election is September 14th. Nashville, let's go vote. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Porterfield, for your time.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the opportunity.